Hey everybody, welcome back to History Student Reacts. Today we'll be watching This Country Disappeared 8 Times by Historically. Now, from the thumbnail I can tell that we're talking about Poland. I really think Poland has been done dirty, maybe as bad as any country in the history of the world. I'm sure there are other competitors, but you'll see what I'm talking about in this video. I really enjoyed all the historically reactions I've done recently, and so I'm excited to get into this one. Before I do, I'd appreciate it if you guys would leave a like on the video, subscribe to my channel, and check out my Patreon, which is linked down below. Now, with all of that out of the way, let's jump right into this reaction.
Pop quiz. What is the most bullied country in history? You might think Korea, wedged between China and Japan, invaded so often it practically had a revolving door and is still split in half like a Cold War souvenir.
Honestly, Korea is a good competitor for the title as well. I mean, we'll be talking about Poland in this one. I think Poland's a good answer, but Korea's a good answer too.
But Korea wasn't wiped off the map, unlike... Another good pick might be Congo. Enslaved, colonized, and carved up by foreign powers who treated it like a resource vending machine. But Congo's suffering came from one monster at a time, and quote-unquote only suffered for 140 years. Not 400 years, unlike... Maybe you could say Palestine, taken over 6 times by different empires, caught in a century of conflict, and still waiting for a resolution.
Look, there's a lot of good competitors, okay? We don't have to make it a competition, but Poland's definitely one of the competitors.
But even in its darkest moments, it was never completely wiped off the political map. Unlike...
Well...
Sorry, just got this awfully annoying thing in my throat. But I'm trying to say, no country on earth is bullied more than Poland. Yes, the country of Bobber and Mika. The country that was undone, fragmented, invaded, partitioned, zombified, erased, occupied, and controlled. This is a time teleporter, blah blah blah, goes back in time. We've done this 2 times already. Just get in. Let's go find out why it always went wrong. Historically Facts, Part 11. Before we talk about how...
I will say though, the thing with Poland, and I'm sure we'll see in this video, is that Poland did have a time when it was actually quite powerful. It was a powerful state in Eastern Europe, so it hasn't always been bad for Poland, right? Poland has been powerful, at least once, at times. Just oftentimes it has been quite bullied by its neighbors.
It kept disappearing, we should talk about how it appeared. Our first stop is 966 AD. Before the year 966, Poland was a tribal territory ruled by the Piast dynasty. They had military, economic, and administrative structures, but it wasn't recognized by neighboring powers as a legitimate kingdom. Only one person can make it recognized as a proper state. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome our recurring guest, Jesus Christ. In the eyes of all the cool kids, so the Germanic, Italian, and Bohemian kingdoms, you are only a real state if you are a Christian. So in 966, the ruler Mieszko got himself baptized and became the Duke of Poland. Yup, he didn't proclaim himself as a king. He was...
Yeah, classic. And of course, in this era, you've sort of got a decision to make whether you want to be closer to the Western Church, the Latin Church, the Catholics, we could call them, or you want to be closer to the Eastern Church, the Orthodox, right? I mean, we see this for a lot of Eastern Europeans or Central European countries, the Poles, the Russians, the Bulgarians. Who do you want to be closer to? Usually determined by your geography.
A humble lad and stayed a duke his whole life. Though the more likely reason is that the Holy Roman Empire would have eaten them alive if he set himself up as a threat. So his son, Bolesław I the Brave, became in 1025 the King of Poland. And the Kingdom of Poland was born and existed for exactly 6 years.
Oh.
Yep, the poor place only existed for 6 years and the exact thing Mieszko predicted had happened. Let me explain how. Mieszko's son, Bolesław I, was technically the first king of Poland, but he only crowned himself king literally the same day that he died. Very convenient for his son, Mieszko II, who then became king without having to actually crown himself king. Slight problem though. Brothers. If there is one thing that Polish people hate more than Russia, it is brothers. Bolesław the Brave had 3 sons, and he wasn't stupid. He knew that after his passing, his kingdom will be split between all 3. And that would certainly mean a civil war and the Polish state splitting apart. So to fix this, he kicked his two oldest sons out of the family to ensure his smartest and son with the most potential would inherit the entire kingdom.
This is what happens when you have multiple potential heirs to the throne. There are gonna be problems, which is oftentimes when, the new king or emperor comes about, he will have to get rid of his brothers, those potential heirs or successors, which he might do by locking them up, sending them to a monastery. That's a Byzantine Empire classic, by maiming them, or even, in the case of, say, the Ottomans, by killing them. So there's a couple different options you could go for, more or less brutal.
Minimizing the risk of the entire kingdom falling apart. What the brave man forgot is that brothers have feelings, and they were pissed off. Otto was exiled and escaped to Italy, while Besprim escaped to the Holy Roman Empire. So while Mieszko II is getting cozy on the...
See, that's a problem. Now you've got potential successors or potential heirs/challengers in the territory of, well, maybe not necessarily your enemies, but people who could be enemies, and they may take advantage of this.
Throne, thinking, ah yes, stability at last. His exiled brothers were basically doing Rocky training montages in foreign courts. Besprim shows up in the Holy Roman Empire, whispering sweet nothings into Emperor Conrad's ear, like, hey buddy, you know who's not paying you tributes like a good little vassal? My brother. Meanwhile, Otto is in Italy, probably trying to learn swordplay and democracy from the Pope. The result? Poland gets invaded. From the west, from the east, even a civil war started between the pagans and the Christians. It's like everyone got a group chat invite titled, Let's Wreck Poland. And by 1031, Mieszko II is booted from the throne.
Yeah, so the idea of everyone ganging up and invading Poland, we're gonna see this again.
Country is in chaos, and guess who returns? Besprim. He rides back into Poland with German backing and all the sibling spite in the world. And for a brief moment, he rules. He even forcefully castrated Mieszko II because frick you, I guess? It shouldn't come as a surprise that Besprim...
like I said, one of the options for potential heirs or successors was to maim them. Now, castration? Maybe not the most typical of those maimings, but I guess potential one of them. But maybe that was just pure brutality or cruelty. I don't know if there was any purpose to it.
Was a horrendous leader. He cancels the royal title altogether and rules as just the Duke, most likely to satisfy his German patrons. He gets assassinated within a year. No suspects, but we are guessing the killer's name can probably rhyme with Drodder. Because Otto steps up, tries to claim the throne, lasts even shorter, gets murdered too. So we are 2 brothers down, 0 stable kings, and Poland is doing what it does best, bleeding in 5 directions at once.
Right.
Eventually, Mieszko II returns to the throne like, hey, remember me? But Poland is in such shambles, he has to rule a split territory. And accept being demoted back to Duke by the same Holy Roman Empire his dad was trying to avoid. The Kingdom of Poland disappeared for the first time. It does get restored a little bit later by Casimir I, also known as the Restorer. So we're back on track, baby. Hell yeah, for a whopping 80 years.
Oh.
By the way, you know what won't take 80 years? This segue to our sponsor. You ever feel like the internet knows a little bit too much about you?
Yes, I think it does. I will have Historically's video linked down below in the description, and you should go and check it out. Give him a like, subscribe, he's got his sponsor, show Historically some support for making these videos that we all enjoy. I like to react to, they're always entertaining, funny, so please go and show them some support for making these videos. I'll let the rest of the ad play through.
Restricted content is a very real thing. But don't you worry, my friend. You get 4 extra months of Surfshark for free when you go to surfshark.com/historically or use the code historically at checkout. Yep, that's 4 free months on top of an already great deal. And if you don't like it, there is a 30-day money-back guarantee. Easy. So again, surfshark.com/historically for 4 extra months of protection, privacy, and peace of mind. Meet Boleslav III, strong ruler, great war tactician, and proud owner of one very bad idea. On his deathbed, Boleslav looks at his sons and thinks, I could give the crown to one of you, or hear me out, I could give all of you your own pieces of Poland.
Uh-oh.
And that is how Poland entered its second slow motion disappearance. Because instead of a king, Poland got 4 of them. And then 8.
This is why we usually go by primogeniture. You're passing everything on to your eldest son. You know, it's not the greatest idea to break up your empire into a bunch of little pieces. You usually just give it to either your eldest son or your selected heir or whatever. Just try to keep it whole at least.
And then 12, and then no one really know how many there were. This brilliant system was called the seniority system, a sort of monarchy light. The eldest son got Krakow and the prestigious title of Senior Duke, while the rest get their own duchies to play with. The catch? The younger brothers were still supposed to obey the eldest. They didn't. What followed was 200 years
Yeah, I'm sure that's all gonna work out well.
of dukes fighting other dukes, sons stabbing uncles, cousins suing cousins over a pond, and everyone calling themselves a rightful ruler of something.
Yeah.
The map of Poland starts looking less like a country and more like a cracked mirror. Meanwhile, external neighbors are watching this like it's reality TV. Bohemia takes Silesia, German settlers pour into the west and build towns that to this day still end in Berg. The Holy Roman Empire keeps accidentally annexing things. And worst of all, the Teutonic Knights get invited in to help Christianize Prussia and promptly forget to leave.
Yeah, and we're gonna see, throughout the story of Poland, there's a lot of issues with the Germans. Of course, from the Polish perspective, you've got the Germans coming from the west. From the German perspective, they're sort of continually pushing eastwards into Poland. That's going to be an issue with Prussia, with Austria, with the German Empire. I mean, with the Reich, obviously, lots of different German states, and just German settlers are going to be causing issues for Poles in Poland throughout the history of the country.
Poland is still there, technically, but if you ask someone who's in charge, the answer would be no one. Politically, the country disappeared to a tribal time. But then, finally in the early 1300s, someone decides enough is enough. Enter Vladislav I. Short guy, long name, huge patience. He spent decades fighting off rivals, holding together what scraps of Poland are left, and slowly reuniting the duchies. He's exiled more times than most people change shoes. But
And that's funny. And I'll say, we talk about Poland here being split up in a bunch of different chunks, and to be fair, that is not too different from what's going on in the rest of Europe in this era. I feel like sometimes when we think of medieval Europe, we think of these great centralized empires with these absolute monarchs and that sort of thing, but really that is not what characterized medieval Europe. What we're talking about is more a collection of many, many different states, of duchies, polities, all these different little states who sometimes make up larger countries or empires, but usually are not getting along. And when we talk about an era of centralized power and absolute monarchs, we're more talking about the late Middle Ages into really the early modern era. More the 15, 16, 1700s. That's post-medieval, right? So really, a lot of this type of stuff is going on throughout the Middle Ages. It's not just Poland, but of course we do see Poland is very fragmented during this time.
somehow he keeps coming back. Just like Poland. And in 1320, against all odds, he gets crowned King of Poland in Krakow. The first real king in over 200 years.
He melted.
Disappearance number 2, reversed. Now Poland is finally back on its feet. For 65 years? Come on, Poland, rookie numbers. 1385. Poland is once again facing a crisis. The king dies without an heir, so they reach out to the biggest, not yet Christified state in Europe, Lithuania. The deal? If their Grand Duke, Jogaila, converts to Christianity, marries the 12-year-old Polish queen, and merges his country with Poland, he will get the crown. He agrees, converts, marries, gets baptized, and takes the name Vladislav II. because this family has zero chills about recycling names. And just like that, Poland and Lithuania become one of the largest countries in Europe, the
Yeah.
Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. For once, and the only time ever, Poland disappeared for a beneficial reason. It was
Yeah, I mean, and when I talk about Poland being powerful, I mean, this is what I'm talking about. The Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, Poland-Lithuania, right? I mean, it becomes one of the most powerful states in Central Eastern Europe, really an empire in its own right. It's sort of a high point for the power of Poland, Lithuania in this case.
multilingual, multi-ethnic, and massive. From the Baltic to the Black Sea, bigger than France, richer than England, and
Yeah, Poland is really leveled up in this moment.
more importantly, the Germans were afraid to meddle with them. For a while, it works. They kicked out the annoying Teutonic Knights, they hold off the Mongols, and even invaded Moscow. Twice.
Yeah, this is when Poland is, showing its strength against the Germans, against the Russians. They're powerful. They're the big dog in the neighborhood. No one can really compete with them for a while. It's not going to last forever, but it's a moment when Poland-Lithuania is really on top.
But of course, it's Poland, so the high never lasts. Fast forward 200 years. Welcome to the Swedish deluge, or as the Poles call it, potop, which literally means the flood, because that's how it felt. Fast, aggressive, devastating. But why Sweden? Why the funny country of IKEA and meatballs? Well, because of petty reasons. Of course, they noticed Poland had a lot of gold and money, so that made them a nice target. But that wasn't the reason they invaded. The main reason was a really long-standing rivalry. A couple hundred years ago, just when the Commonwealth started growing, the King Sigismund III somehow, through honestly sheer random tomfoolery, ended up as the King of the Commonwealth and inherited the Kingdom of Sweden. Lucky, lucky guy. Or so he thought. Firstly, he was Catholic, and Sweden was just done turning fully Protestant.
Uh-oh.
That's on its own a recipe for disaster. But secondly, the king rather lived in the Commonwealth than in Sweden. The nobility in Sweden had enough of him and kicked him out as the king of Sweden, and elected a different guy. But Sigismund never got over that. He kept claiming the Swedish throne even after they told him to go baptize a lake. And Sweden, 50 years later, they never forgot that Poland was housing this papist drama king with a royal grudge. So when Sweden looked at Poland in 1655, they didn't see just a neighbor, they saw unfinished business.
Right, and remember, this is a Sweden that is not known for IKEA and meatballs at this point. This is a Sweden that's known for fighting brutal warfare. I mean, this is really, in many ways, a warrior state. A state that has found a lot of success in expanding its empire. I mean, both in Scandinavia, in the Nordic countries, and beyond. Right? Sweden has found a lot of success fighting down throughout sort of Central Eastern Europe itself. So Sweden, it's a pretty impressive competitor in this time period.
It all happened 50 years ago, but they really needed a good reason to plunder this massive country. And plunder, they did. What happened next was not a war. It was a 5-year natural disaster. Warsaw, burned. Krakow, occupied. Monasteries, looted. Nobles, fleeing. Civilians, dead, starved, or sold. The population drops by half, and the fourth disappearance
Jesus.
turned Poland into a wasteland. Still on the map, but basically nothing left to fill it in with. The Commonwealth limps into the 1700s with a
I
massive
mean, that's brutal. But, I mean, once again, this was a time that was extremely brutal for Central Europe generally. I mean, we're talking about the 30 Years' War, the religious wars of Europe. I mean, the German lands, the Holy Roman Empire, had been devastated as well, with a massive population devastation, a third, a half in some places, a lot of death, famine, and there were knock-on effects, which is in some ways what we're seeing here. So it appears Poland in many ways has been devastated too.
hangover. The nobles are fractured, the cities are burned, the army is broke, and the monarchy, oh boy. They invent a new political system so dysfunctional it deserves its own sitcom. The Liberum Veto. A parliamentary rule where if one noble disagrees with anything, the entire decision is cancelled.
Yeah, it's an interesting system and, a lot of authority for the aristocracy there. Pretty non-functional as well. Often cause a lot of issues, in fact.
In 1764, a puppet king is elected. Stanisław August Poniatowski. Charming, French-educated, progressive, and deeply in love with Catherine the Great,
Yep.
the Empress of Russia. Yeah, that's right. The King of Poland was once the side piece of the woman who would eventually help destroy him.
Yeah, and well, he's an interesting character, but essentially is acting as this puppet king. Perhaps not entirely, but an interesting fella.
Isn't that poetry? He tries to modernize Poland, set up schools, build a functioning government. But every time he lifts a finger, Catherine lifts a boot. The nobles, funded by Russia, or even the Prussians and Austrians, scream about tradition and freedom. And by freedom, they mean the freedom to sabotage their own country for personal gain.
Yeah, right. So an era when Poland really has a non-functional political system in many ways. Their ruler is someone who's being walked all over. Not literally, maybe literally, by Catherine the Great. Their politicians, their aristocrats are being influenced, I mean, primarily by Russia. We're talking about a lot of Russian influence over the very powerful Catherine the Great, who of course had an eye towards Russian expansion, but you're also seeing a lot of Austrian influence, a lot of Prussian influence, right? German influence. And so Poland has really becoming a non-functional state in this era and is sort of continuing to weaken at a time when its neighbors are strengthening, right? Russia under Catherine is really strengthening. Prussia, this is the era of Frederick the Great. We're talking about really absolute monarchies, enlightened despots here. That's what Catherine and Frederick are known as, who are really strengthening their respective states. And some ways, as a result of that, Poland is actually weakening.
Eventually, the neighbors decide Poland's too incompetent to be left alone. In 1772, they meet up and go, so instead of fighting over Poland, why don't we just slice it like a cake? First partition, boom, 30% of Poland is gone overnight. Poland's like, wait, what? But tries to keep going. Then in 1791, plot twist, Poland writes one of the most progressive constitutions in Europe. It guaranteed civil rights, strengthens the monarchy, reduces noble privilege, and Russia sees this and immediately starts foaming at the mouth. How dare you to get your act together without permission? So in 1793, they hit them with the second partition.
1791 wasn't really the moment for it. We're talking, now, I mean, it makes sense in the context. We're talking about the era of the French Revolution, of really liberalism in action. Poland wants a piece of that. Of course, the very conservative Russia is not a fan of that. Now, I know that Catherine the Great is seen as this great enlightened monarch, this sort of liberal leader, but she was very hostile towards the French Revolution. In fact, she does sort of turn away from some of her early Enlightenment ideas when the French Revolution occurs. So she and Austria and Prussia are not fans of what is happening here. And we see the partition of Poland, not really because of that. I mean, it's really more realpolitik, where Prussia and Austria and Russia are these rivals of the region, and they, fighting each other, well, that would lose a lot of lives, cost a lot of resources. And so they say, hey, we all want more territory. We all want to expand. Frankly, we all want to expand into Poland. So instead of fighting each other, why don't we agree to just carve up Poland, to partition it, and we'll each take chunks of Polish territory for ourselves? Isn't that a nice, peaceful way to solve our diplomatic issues? And they all agree on that. Of course, not the last time we'll see countries agree to partition Poland between them, but that is what we see here in the late 18th century. As of course, a lot is happening in the arena of European geopolitics with the French Revolution, and then Europe breaks out into war. We see Poland, well, once again, it's heading towards ceasing to exist.
More land gone. Poland's borders now look like someone sneezed mid-map. And finally, in 1795, after a failed Polish uprising, Russia, Austria, and Prussia meet one last time and just delete Poland from existence. No fanfare, no epic battle, just bureaucracy, maps, and signatures. Disappearance number 5. Poland is now officially dead. And it stayed like that for, well, look at that, just 12 years.
Yeah.
Revived by an ambitious French general, Napoleon. After he beats Prussia, he gives the Poles a consultation prize, the Duchy of Warsaw.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I'd call a sort of quasi-independent Poland. I mean, it's Poland essentially existing as a French puppet state, right? I mean, Poland isn't truly independent, but this is better for them than being totally conquered by their neighbors. I mean, in this partition, right, and we talked about how Poland has this liberal constitution, they're partitioned by their neighbors, right? The cause of Polish independence becomes this sort of popular liberal political movement throughout Europe, right, even beyond Poland. And this is also why you see a lot of Polish soldiers serving in the French military. They go to France, they go to Napoleon, because they sort of have a shared cause in common. They have a lot of common enemies, and so they go and fight alongside the French. And so Napoleon, in sort of recognition of that, he creates this, like I said, a sort of quasi-autonomous Poland. So Poland is sort of in this weird, area in between total independence and non-existence at this point.
Sick. It was technically like a French puppet state, but the Poles are hyped. They get a constitution, reforms, even a Polish army. But we all know what happened.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is better for Poland than they've had in a while, I'll put it that way. But, of course, things are not going to end well for Napoleon.
But at the Congress of Vienna, Napoleon loses again, and the monarchies in Europe go right back to drawing borders. The duchy is liquidated. Austria, Prussia, and Russia redivide the lands, and the 6th disappearance from the map entirely for the 2nd time has happened. And this time, they were bullied the harshest. The Polish state gone for another whopping 103 years. But this time, as opposed to before, the 3 bully countries really wanted to erase Poland. I originally wanted to fast travel to when Poland finally re-emerged, but you can't believe to what extent the countries tried to erase Poland. Let's start from the bad to the worst. The bad, the Austrian Empire.
I will point out, after the Congress of Vienna, right? So the Congress of Vienna is what wraps up the Napoleonic Wars. It sets the new geopolitical stage for this next era of European history. What happens is Poland, what you're left with, I mean, Prussia, Austria, and Russia get to keep a lot of Polish territory, but there is, like, some sort of Polish state existing. It's called Congress Poland, which is, once again, this sort of quasi-autonomous Polish state where the position of king or monarch is filled by the Russian Tsar. Now, you can probably see the issue there, right? So Poland technically sort of exists in this time period following the Congress of Vienna, but the Russian Tsar promises, oh yes, you can have your liberal constitution, and you'll be autonomous, and you can do what you want and have your own politics. But really, from the beginning, Poland becomes less and less independent. Russia takes more and more power, until a few years later, Poland essentially has an uprising, Russia steps in to crush it, and then Russia fully annexes that Polish territory. So even this sort of semi-existing Polish state vanishes, and Poland fully becomes part of the Russian Empire, and will be part of the Russian Empire for a while. So that's what happens in this era we're talking about here, but here we'll get to see, I imagine, the abuses of Poles themselves living within these 3 empires. And there are a lot of abuses of Poles throughout this time period.
They got the poorest and most rural part of the country, so they didn't care too much about it, as there wasn't too much money to be made from it. They initially suppressed Polish culture like the rest. And by that, I mean they literally encouraged Polish peasants to kill Polish nobility, which they did. But after the Austrian Empire became the Austro-Hungarian Empire in 1867, they suddenly were like, you know what? You can speak Polish in your schools. And you know what? Go govern your own region. The Austro-Hungarians still weren't good, but to the Polish stuck in the German and Russian empires, it was basically Disney World to them.
I mean, Austria is under a little more pressure, right? Because the Austrian Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, is this patchwork of different ethnicities. The Hungarians are especially prominent, which is why they get pressured into becoming the Austro-Hungarian Empire, this sort of dual crown situation. And so they're sort of forced to give these ethnicities rights to a certain degree. And also for the Austrians, they're worried that the Hungarians are going to take everything over. And so the Austrians sort of turn to these other ethnicities and say, hey, why don't we give you some rights just as a sort of counterweight against the Hungarians, right? So there's a certain degree of that. But, in Russia, you see a lot of violence against the Poles, a lot of, cultural erasure. And you see that in Prussia, and then especially in the German Empire, which I hope we'll get to talk about that in particular.
If the Austro-Hungarian Empire was West Berlin, then the others were in the Gulag. The wars. Prussia/German Empire. Hello, Jan Kowalski. Oh, sorry, I mean Johann Kowalstein. I sure love the city of Wroclaw. Oh, sorry, I mean Breslau. Johann, do you want to get some pierogi? Oh, sorry, I mean gefühlte Teigtaschen? The Germans didn't want to just suppress Polish culture. They wanted to erase it. Not with the sword, as in the Second World War, that's for later, but with the pen, which is mightier than the blah 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 blah. Everything was Germanized. Speaking Polish was banned. Polish schools were German schools now. And you have to order your gefühlte Teigtaschen in German now. Students who speak Polish are expelled, parents who slip up some Polish lose their job and get imprisoned, and if you were a priest, well, you'll have it explicitly tough. The Germans knew Polish holds strong to their religion, so to ruin that Polish pride, they straight up just arrested priests. And the next time you speak a prayer to yourself, do it in German! The Great Bismarck came with an even better plan. Seize lands from the Polish and pay Germans to live there.
Yeah, so, this is happening under Prussia. It gets even worse under the German Empire, especially under Bismarck, right? Bismarck is the great sort of unifier of Germany, and all this revolves around German nationalism, which is increasingly becoming more and more dangerous in this time period. And what you see is this movement called Kulturkampf, where Bismarck sort of goes to war against the Catholic Church, essentially. And if you don't remember, Poles are mostly Catholic. That's a big part of their culture, in fact. And so a big part of Kulturkampf is essentially going to war against Polish identity. And so you see, a lot of this had already been happening, but as you see, the Germanization of Polish culture, you can't use your Polish language or your Polish names. And what you also see is what you'd call the colonization of Polish territory. You see Germans sent to colonize Polish land, or Germans essentially given Polish land to settle, to really Germanize the area, right? And so that's part of this Kulturkampf, this whole anti-Polish movement, essentially, and this attempt to Germanize that Polish territory. And of course, look, we're not at Nazi Germany yet, but a lot of this is sort of familiar to that far-right German nationalism that will continue to develop through this period. And, that Nazi idea of Lebensraum, or living space, where they felt they needed all this territory for Germans to settle. This isn't quite that, but you get a bit of that here.
And now we have the worst, Russia. After the failed uprisings of 1830 and 1863, the Tsars didn't just want to punish Poland, they wanted to beat it out of existence.
Yeah.
Brick by brick, soul by soul. They shut down every Polish school.
And there's a political element to this, which is after the Congress of Vienna, and we're covering a long period of time here through this section. We're covering sort of 1815 through 1914, essentially, right? So 100 years, basically, is the time period we're covering. But if you remember, after the Congress of Vienna, Congress Poland was given this pretty liberal constitution, at first. And so Poland was sort of this outpost of liberalism within the Russian Empire. And a lot of Russian liberals picked up their ideas from Poland and from beyond. And there was this Decembrist liberal uprising in Russia. And the Tsar put some of that blame on Poland itself. And so, Poland was both sort of ethnically repressed and politically repressed because they were this sort of liberal outpost within the Russian Empire. And so there was this sort of extra threat to the Tsar and the Tsarist system of government.
The Polish language from public life, even kindergartens were Russified. 5-year-olds beaten for saying mama instead of mama. Professors who refused to teach in Russian were fired, jailed, or exiled to Siberia, where they could freeze alongside the books they used to assign. And the church? Good luck. Catholicism was seen as the wrong Christianity. Priests were arrested, forced to convert to Orthodoxy, or sent to die in labor camps. Like the Germans, the Russians renamed cities, renamed people, renamed rivers, whole villages.
Yeah, so Poland, we see the Germanization of Polish territory and people within Prussia and Germany, and in Russia we see the Russification of Polish people and Polish land.
Were relocated and repopulated with ethnic Russians. Not with the almighty pen, but with the bloodied sword. But through all of this, the Polish endured. Even after a total of 123 years of disappearance and suppression, the grandkids still spoke Polish, knew the history, and ate pierogi. That came in handy.
Yeah, I mean, after all of this, and after what's going to come, it's really remarkable that Poland continued to exist as a nation, as a culture, and then eventually as a country.
Because after winning the First World War, the Entente powers came up with a great idea to punish the Central powers. Add buffer countries in between them, so they can't team up easily and cause a, well, it sounds stupid, but a second World War. So Poland was reborn.
Poland's back, everybody. I'm sure it's going to last a long time and everything's gonna go well.
Now, to be fair, the British and French were probably stupid drunk on making the borders because the newly reformed Poland was literally asking to get dunked on again. But they survived for 20 years this time. Yeah, it is sad. It is now 1939. Poland is rebuilding. It's modernizing. It's surrounded by two megalomaniacal empires with a crush on its territory.
Yeah, so Poland is back, but you know, you thought things were bad before with your neighbors. Now look at your neighbors. You have got Stalin's Soviet Union to your east, who is just as hungry for expansion as many Russian czars were. And you have got Hitler's Nazi Germany to your west, who we already saw how there was those German colonization programs under Bismarck. You thought that was bad? Hitler is 100 times worse. He not only wants to take your territory, but execute most of the people living there, and he writes it all down in that book of his, right? So he's made pretty clear that he wants to really conquer a lot of territory and do unimaginable things to the people living there. Of course, especially the Jews, but even the non-Jews are going to get a pretty raw deal, and we're going to see that. But once again, you thought your neighbors before were bad, now things are even worse.
On the left, Nazi Germany, on the right, the Soviet Union, and Poland right in the middle. Like a historical chew toy. So Hitler walks into Danzig like, this is mine. Poland says no, French and Britain say, we got your back. But spoiler, they didn't. And after a rowdy September, Poland is gone again. 7th time, by the way. But this time, the brutality reaches biblical levels. Gone was the pen approach, in came the gas instead.
Yeah.
And the Soviets came with the, just to be safe, let's put everyone on the train to Siberia approach.
Yeah, and what we see here is essentially another partition of Poland, right? The Soviets and the Germans signed this non-aggression pact, and they, behind the scenes, they agree to partition Poland among themselves. So what we have here is another partition of Poland, and of course things don't go well for the Poles, but particularly under Nazi occupation, they go through the Holocaust. Where, you know, like I said, Jews are the #1 target, but Slavs in particular are another target. And so Poles are treated terribly, killed in massive numbers, forced into labor camps during this time period. I mean, we all know what a atrocity and a horror the Holocaust was, and the people of Poland are some of the worst victims of this whole thing.
Goodbye 1 million Polish people. Hope you enjoyed your 20 years of having your country back. By 1945, Nazi Germany is gone. Poland is liberated, but guess who's now in charge? Stalin. The Soviets liberate Poland by doing what they do best. Replacing one tyranny with another. Poland gets a puppet government, Soviet troops, and Soviet censorship. And as the cherry on top, a brand new flag with the same old oppression. This is the 8th time, and final time, for now, that Poland disappears. Ask your parents, not even your grandparents. They could literally tell you how life was under extreme communism. Poland was a satellite state for the Soviets.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I wouldn't say Poland ceased to exist. I mean, Poland still existed during this time period. It's just, it's another example of it being a sort of quasi-autonomous state where it's essentially a Soviet puppet state.
Till it collapsed in 1991. And now, in 2025, Poland has been free and strong for 34 years.
Yeah, we'll see how long it lasts this time. Hopefully much longer, okay? Poland is back. It's back in a big way. Now Poland is one of the most influential and powerful countries in Eastern Europe. When we talk about European politics in the EU, Poland is a real mover and shaker. And of course, in the world right now, with the Russian war in Ukraine, tensions are high, and Poland is sort of posed to be a real leader in that respect, but it does sort of depend on how things go, you could argue.
I don't know about you, but I'm starting to get anxious about their existence. The law of repetition says Poland will be gone in a couple of years, so quickly visit it while we still can and make sure to eat some pierogi. A food that will stick around as long as the Polish will. And they will stick around. No matter what happens to the Polish people, even if they literally can't speak their language or they'll get shot, they survived. Or rather, outlasted.
That's right. I mean, hey, we got a lot of Polish immigrants, or have had a lot of Polish immigrants here in America because of all that repression Poland was going through in the 19th and 20th centuries. And so especially, I live in Pennsylvania, used to live in Pittsburgh, a lot of Polish immigrants out there, a lot of delicious, tasty pierogies. But really in a lot of places in Pennsylvania, even where I am right now, in the Philly area, a lot of Polish immigrants. So, the Poles continue to survive, whether they're in Poland or in the diaspora outside of Poland.
Just think about it for a moment. Poland outlived the Mongols, who burned it, the Teutonic Knights, who Christianized it by force, the Swedish Empire, who drowned it, Prussia, who partitioned it, the Austrians, who ignored it, the Russian Empire, who erased it, the Soviet Union, who smothered it, and the Third Reich, who tried to annihilate it. They all fell apart, but Poland, it's still here. Checkmate, tovarish.
Well, there you go. The country that disappeared 8 times. Poland. A really fascinating history. I feel like, I haven't done a ton of Polish history in particular, but given the type of history we cover on this channel, we do talk about Poland a lot, and typically how Poland is being done dirty by its neighbors. You got a good look at that during this video. So there we go. Poland. Hopefully it continues to exist this time. If you guys enjoyed this one, I'd appreciate it if you'd leave a like, subscribe, and check out my Patreon, which is linked down below. Hope you guys are having a great day today, and I will see you all again next time. Goodbye.